So we've already seen how to move from one activity to another, but what if we want to actually pass some data along with it? For instance, we might want to tell the next activity what to show, if it was a detail view of something that we were working on. Or maybe we want it to return a picture because we want to use someone's camera. Well, that's what we're going to go over now. So I have my first activity and second activity from the last time that we were talking. However, I have this other layout that I want to use, this detail activity. So I could just send a intent to the detail activity after defining it here in the Android manifest, which I did. But I really would like someone to actually select something and then get whatever they selected back. We see this a lot in many different applications where you want to give a user a full view of what they're going to see instead of a tiny little box in order to pick content. So here's the button for the second activity that goes to the detail activity. We can see it named right here, Go to Detail Activity. In my second activity, I'm going and getting a reference to it here and setting another listener. Now this looks a little bit different. We're still using the same view.getContext, and we're still explicitly pointing to the detail activity class, but now I have this other line here. I.putExtra. Well, this is amazing because it's super simple to send a key value pair along with your intent. You just need a key and then a value. There are tons of different types of pieces besides just besides strings. As you can see here, putExtra has bytes and byte arrays. We could even use a customized class as long as it implements serializable. Now the other difference here is that I've called a method not startActivity, but startActivity4result. When you do this, you really want to pass in a detail request. So I created a static final int detail request, and I've just set it to 1. You want to stay away from 0. 1, 2, 3. This allows you to specify specifically what the reason was for why you were requesting that data. It's going to come back to you later. My detail activity, I'm now in a situation where I want to get data out of the intent. And that is what this code here does. So the first thing you want to do is get the intent. After that, I call getExtras and save it as this extras variable. I'm checking to make sure it's actually got something there. And then I'm using extras.getString and passing in the key that I used back here, key for sending. This text matches the same as this text, and this phrase right here, getString, allows me to get for this key a value that will be a string. Now I just check one more time to make sure that's not null, and then I just pop it up. So that's great, and if I run this, I could see that happen. But I told you that I wanted to make it so that when someone selects something, it comes back. So how does that work? Well, in the detail, I have a spinner, which is just a selection of items. Our spinner is defined right here, spinner selection. It's also pointing to entries of array/actions. Well, I stuck that here in strings, so I could just quickly put up some options. So after I get a reference to the spinner, and again, I have my private member variables up here, I get a reference to that spinner on the UI. I also get a reference to the return button on the UI, and sure enough, set another listener. This looks a little bit different, doesn't it? I'm using a new intent, but I'm not passing in things into the constructor this time. In fact, I'm just creating a blank intent. That's because I don't really want to use my intent to do an explicit call because I'm going to be returning. In this case, I'm going to be saying that the string for the item that I selected should be put into the intent as an extra, And I'm using a key, yet again, for a key value pair. Key for returning, my selection, and I will use that on the other end in order to pull it out. Lastly, after all that, I'm going to have to tell it that, one, this is a result that I believe is successful by using result OK, and then I pass in the intent so I can set that result. If I didn't do this, I would be in a situation where the intent would come back and I wouldn't be able to determine whether or not something was a successful selection. For instance, when you press the back button and intent is sent back to the original activity, the result is not OK, and you know that what you tried to perform was not something where the user deliberately made a selection. Lastly, I'm just calling finish to end the activity, and we go back to the second activity. However, now this method comes into play. OnActivityResult has 1, 2, 3 pieces of important data. First is the request code. This lets us know, did I actually return successfully? The next is the result code, which lets us know, well, where did you come from? In this case, it was from the detail request that I had made earlier. Again, after I know that everything's A-OK with where I came from, I do want to check that my data actually has the value for that key. Key for returning, key for returning. Then I can use data.getExtras.getString, again to get for this key, the value, which should be a string type. And then I'm going to use it to actually display it on the selected view. So again, we go from starting activity for result to coming back on activity result. We have our detail request, result OK, and again, the key for the key value pair on the extra inside the intent. If we see it run now, you'll see I can go to my second activity. I have nothing selected yet. When I click my detail activity, I can see some data from the second activity has percolated through here. If I now make a selection and click Return Selection, I will see that data right here. Now, watch and notice that if I have nothing selected yet, I go to Detail Activity, again some data coming in, and I select, and then I press back. It is still nothing selected yet. That's because in our code, we were looking for a result OK, and this protects us from back button requests, and it allows us to guarantee that a user actually meant to do what they wanted to do. And that is how you pass data from one activity to the other and back.